So everything's quiet here. A lot of people are out of town this New York Rath Yatra. But we'll continue our reading on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari Janavalabha Girivadadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nandana Brajagana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari Janavalabha Girivadadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari Janavalabha Yasodarandana Brajaka Ranjana Ranjana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodarandana Brajagana Ranjana Ranjana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhattacharya Sacharya Srimad His Divine Grace H.D. Bhaktivedanta Swami Jiva Prabhupada Ananta Gauda Vaishnava Niki Navacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Principal Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jananda Shidvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki. ISKCON founder Srila Prabhupada Ki. Shishi Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun. Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Mayapur Dham Ki. Navadvip Dham Ki. Jamuna Maya Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Bhakta Devi Ki. Shishi Radha Golokananda Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya chapter 9. Leela Shakti left off at text 49. She read the translation in the first paragraph, short paragraph, but it's a long paragraph, a long purport. So we're just going to start that one over for context and then read that. So Lord Chaitanya is on his South Indian tour. He's just met for a long time. We read chapter 8. It was a very long chapter where he's met with Ramananda Roy, so that was a very nice pastime. Some of the most intimate and revealing information comes out of that chapter, and chapter 4 of Adi Leela. These two chapters really open up and explain as sadhakas what we're endeavoring to achieve and understand, primarily Lord Chaitanya's internal mood. And second, here, this is also revealed in this talk with Ramananda Roy that eventually came out in his talks. And it actually revealed the whole step-by-step process of devotional service as far as making advancement in devotional service and the process and the progress that we all are endeavoring to make. So, text 49. Om Viganda Timranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chaksu Om Nitamnina Tajma Shri Gurve Namaha. So Lord Chaitanya has come across some Buddhists. So the scriptures of the Buddhist cult are chiefly based on argument and logic. And they contain 9 chief principles. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated the Buddhists in their argument, they could not establish their cult. Purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states that according to the Buddhist cult, there are 2 ways of understanding philosophy. One is called Hinayana, and the other is called Mahayana. Along with Buddhist path, there are 9 principles. 1, the creation is eternal. Therefore, there is no need to accept a creator. 2, this cosmic manifestation is false. 3, I am is the truth. 4, there is repetition of birth and death. 5, Lord Buddha is the only source of understanding the truth. 6, the principle of nirvana or annihilation is the ultimate goal. 7, the philosophy of Buddha is the only philosophical path. And 8, the Vedas are compiled by human beings. Pious activities showing mercy to others and so on are advised. Text 49. So we're beginning the second paragraph. chapter 9, text 49. The Vedas were compiled by human beings, but of course, Vyasadeva was called an empowered incarnation of the Lord. So it's not like when they say human beings, they're thinking conditioned souls. One. Number two, when they got everything else wrong, they're going to come up with the conclusion that that's wrong. It's like math. I mean, you can just do the easiest math. 1 and 1 is 2, plus 4 is 5, plus 3 is, once you make a mistake, it doesn't matter you get it right every single time, the answer is going to be wrong. So this is the conclusions are just, at this point, are all going to be off. No one can attain the absolute truth by argument. One may be very expert in logic, and another person may be even more expert in the art of argument. Because there's no such word jugglery in logic, one can never. There's so much word jugglery in logic, one can never come to the real conclusion about the absolute truth by argument. The followers of the Vedic principles understand this. However, it is seen here that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated the Buddhist philosophy by argument. Those who are preachers in ISKCON will certainly meet many people who believe in intellectual arguments. Most of these people do not believe in the authority of the Vedas. Nevertheless, they accept intellectual speculation and argument. Therefore, the preachers of Krishna consciousness should be prepared to defeat others by argument, just as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. In this verse, it is clearly said, Tarke Kandila Prabhu. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu put forward such a strong argument that the Buddhists could not counter him to establish their cult. And some of these best arguments are personal realizations that we have in our practice. So we apply these personal realizations in preaching. Two is just preaching, because then you learn. When you give arguments, you learn. Sometimes you might not, later you might be preaching to somebody or talking to somebody, not always an argument, and then later, well, I wish I would have said this, so that becomes experience, and then you realize that. So the more you do it, like anything else, the better you get at it. Their first principle is that the creation has always existed. But if this were the case, there could be no theory of annihilation. The Buddhists maintain that annihilation or dissolution is the highest truth. If the creation eternally exists, there is no question of dissolution or annihilation. This argument is not very strong because by practical experience, we see that material things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The ultimate aim of Buddhist philosophy is to dissolve the body. This is proposed because the body has a beginning. Similarly, the entire cosmic manifestation is a gigantic body. But if we accept that it always exists, there can be no question of annihilation. Therefore, the attempt to annihilate everything in order to attain zero is an absurdity. For our own practical experience, we have to accept the beginning of creation, and we accept the beginning, we must accept a creator. Such a creator must possess all an all-pervasive body, as pointed out in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 14. Sarvata pani param tat sarvato krishyo muktam sarvata shrutimal loke saram avritya tishtati. Everywhere are his hands, legs, his eyes, heads, and faces. And he has ears everywhere. In this way, the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. The Supreme Person must be present everywhere. His body exists before the creation. Otherwise, he could not be the creator. If the Supreme Person is a created being, then there is no question of a creator. The conclusion is that the cosmic manifestation is certainly created at a certain time, and the creator exists before the creation. Therefore, the creator is not a created being. The creator is Parabrahman, or the Supreme Spirit. Matter is not only subordinate to spirit, but is actually created on the basis of spirit. When the spirit soul enters the womb of a mother, the body is created by the material ingredients supplied by the mother. Everything is created in the material world, and consequently, there must be a creator who is the Supreme Spirit and who is distinct from matter. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that the material energy is inferior and that the spiritual entity is the living entity. Both inferior and superior energies belong to a Supreme Person. I mean, just by logic, you can see that everything has a birth, everything grows to a certain age, and then it dies. I mean, I don't think anything, even man-made stuff, grows old. The buildings eventually, grow old. Everything just decays over a period of time. So you can adjust this universe as a living thing also. So you can deduct that, okay, it has a birth, it has a time period, and then it also will die or cease to exist. The Buddhists argue that the world is false, but that is not valid. The world is temporary, but it is not false. That's a huge distinction. As long as we have the body, we will suffer the pleasures and pains of the body, even though we are not the body. We may not take these pleasures and pains very seriously, but they are factual nonetheless. We cannot actually say that they are false. If the bodily pains and pleasures were false, the creation would be false also. And consequently, no one would take very much interest in it. The conclusion is that the material creation is not false or imaginary, but it is temporary. The Buddhists maintain that principle, I am, is the ultimate truth. But this excludes the individuality of I and you. If there is no I and you or individuality, there is no possibility of argument. The Buddhist philosophy depends on argument, but there can be no argument if one simply depends on I am. There must be a you or another person also. The philosophy of duality, the existence of the individual soul and the super soul must be there. This is confirmed in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 12, wherein the Lord says, Nat vevaham jatu nasam natvam neme chkana ipa nat chaiva na bhasvishyama sarve vyam ata param. Never was there a time that when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. We existed in the past in different bodies, and after annihilation of this body, we shall exist in another body. The principle of the soul is eternal, and it exists in the body or in another body. Even in this lifetime, we experience the existence of a child's body, a youth's body, a man's or woman's body, or an old body. After the annihilation of the body, we acquire another body. The Buddhist cult also accepts the philosophy of transmigration, but the Buddhists do not properly explain the next birth. There are 8,400,000 species of life, and our next birth may be in any one of them. Therefore, this human body is not guaranteed. Modes of material nature determine what body we're going to get. This is also in the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about the mode of ignorance, you'll get this body. Mode of passion, you'll get this body. Passion is human life. Ignorance is animal life. And goodness is the upper planetary system.
Pure goodness is Vaikuntha. That means you leave this miserable condition. So, yeah, I mean, it's just everything that's alive. We see we all have individualities. Each has a personality. Even though they're all these human bodies, they're all different personalities, and you can just see by people's moods and their modes, and that's also affected by come about by the three modes of material nature. Everybody's different mentality on a given day. But that's the energy that's impregnated into this material life. That's what makes it real. That Krishna's external energy, this Tasha Shakti. According to the Buddhist fifth principle, Lord Buddha is the only source for the attainment of knowledge. We cannot accept this, for Lord Buddha rejected the principles of Vedic knowledge. One must accept a principle of standard knowledge because one cannot attain the absolute truth simply by intellectual speculation. If everyone is an authority, or if everyone accepts his own intelligence as the ultimate criteria, as it is presently fashionable and still is today, this is 40 some years ago Prabhupada wrote this. So that statement is just as true today. I'll read it again. If everyone is an authority, or if everyone accepts his own intelligence as the ultimate criteria, as it is presently fashionable, the scriptures will be interpreted in so many ways, and everyone will claim that his own philosophy is supreme. This has become a very great problem, and everyone is interpreting scripture in his own way and setting up his own basis of authority. Yata mata tata pata. Now everybody and anybody is trying to establish his own theory of ultimate truth. The Buddhists theorize that annihilation or nirvana is the ultimate goal. Annihilation applies to the body, but the spirit soul transmigrates from one body to another. If this were not the case, how can so many multifarious bodies come into existence? If the next birth is a fact, the next bodily form is also a fact. As soon as we accept a material body, we must accept the fact that that body will be annihilated and that we will have to accept another body. If all the material bodies are doomed to annihilation, we must obtain a non-material body or spiritual body. If we wish the next birth to be anything but false, how the spiritual body is attained is explained by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. Ganma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tvaktva deham punar gyanma naiti mam ite eti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. This is the highest perfection, to give up one's material body and not accept another one, but to return home back to Godhead. It is not that perfection means one's existence becomes void or zero. Existence continues. But if we positively want to annihilate the material body, we have to accept a spiritual body. Otherwise, there can be no eternity for the soul. We cannot accept the theory that the Buddhist philosophy is the only way, for there are so many defects in that philosophy. A perfect philosophy is one that has no defects, and that is Vedanta philosophy. No one can point out any defects in Vedanta philosophy, and therefore we can conclude that Vedanta is the supreme philosophy, a supreme philosophical way to understand the truth. According to the Buddhist cult, the Vedas are compiled by ordinary human beings. If this were the case, they would not be authoritative. From the Vedic literatures, we understand that shortly after the creation, Lord Brahma was instructed in the Vedas. It is not that the Vedas were created by Brahma, although Brahma is the original person in the universe. Yet Brahma did not create the Vedas, but he is acknowledged as the first created being. Wherefrom did Vedic knowledge come to Brahma? Obviously, the Vedas did not come from an ordinary person born in the material world. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hirija Ya Adi Kavyahe. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1:1. After its creation, the Supreme Person imparted the Vedic knowledge within the heart of Brahma. There was no person in the beginning of the creation other than Brahma, yet he did not compile the Vedas. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Vedas were not compiled by any created being. Vedic knowledge is given by the personality of Godhead who created this material world. This is also accepted by Sankaracharya, although he is not a Vaishnava. It is stated that mercy is one of the qualities of a Buddhist. But mercy is a relative thing. We show our mercy to a subordinate or to one who is suffering more than ourselves. However, if there is a superior person present, that superior person cannot be the object of our mercy. This is a good point. Rather, we are objects for the mercy of the Supreme Person. Therefore, showing compassion and mercy is a relative activity. It is not the absolute truth. Apart from this, we also must know what actual mercy is. To give a sick man something is to give a sick man something forbidden for him to eat is not mercy. Rather, it is cruelty. Unless we know what mercy is, we may create an undesirable situation. If we wish to show real mercy, we will preach Krishna consciousness in order to revive the lost consciousness of human beings, the living entity's original consciousness. Since the Buddhist philosophy does not admit the existence of the spirit soul, the so-called mercy of the Buddhists is defective. So very good points Prabhupada really brings out, countering these Buddhist philosophy. So, text 50. I like that, so many points, but just logic. This is just sometimes just preaching common sense. Even Prabhupada talked about how mercy is relative. It's just, if you stop and think philosophically, then you can understand things a little bit clearly. If you accept the help from someone who's higher in knowledge, then you can actually receive that mercy. You're not going to give that person mercy, but that person's going to help you see clearly. So that's why Prabhupada always uses bona fide source, bona fide spiritual master from the proper source. Text 50. Yeah, that's a good point, Krishna Priya brought up. And you can see that when you interact. I see it also, even in my youngest son, this whole spirituality, how it's creeping in also on society in a general way, even though they don't consider themselves religious people. They kind of like some kind of spirituality, but their spiritual, this influence is not clear, gives them a clear understanding of what spirituality is. And people take the Buddhist lot of times because they don't want to accept any authority. You know, they like that philosophy because they can kind of maintain some individuality without having to accept some person, some creator. That's a big thing. People like spirituality, but they don't like religion. And religion, to nobody, I don't like religion either. I don't want to be a part of any religion. But that doesn't mean that one can't have a proper understanding of a creator and have a personal relationship with that creator. That religion is the process by which we can attain that relationship. It's not the end of the means. Yeah, so this philosophy of Buddhism is really in a corrupted way in society, infected society. Okay, so the teacher of the Buddhist cult set forth the 9 principles, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu broke them to pieces with the strong logic. All mental speculators and learned scholars were defeated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when the people began to laugh, the Buddhist philosophers felt both shame and fear. These philosophers were all atheists. Purport. These philosophers were all atheists, for they did not believe in the existence of God. Atheists may be very expert in mental speculation and may be so-called great philosophers, but they can be defeated by a Vaishnava firmly situated in his conviction and God consciousness. Following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the preachers engaged in the service of ISKCON should be very expert in putting forth strong arguments and defeating all types of atheists. 52. The Buddhists could understand that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a Vaishnava, and they returned home very unhappy. Later, however, they began to plot against the Lord. Uh-oh. Drama. Lord Chaitanya will deal with it appropriately. Having made their plot, the Buddhists brought a plate of untouchable food before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and called it Mahaprasadam. Purport. The word apavitra ana refers to food that is unacceptable for a Vaishnava. In other words, a Vaishnava cannot accept any food offered by a Vaishnava in the name of Mahaprasad. This should be a principle for all the Vaishnavas. When asked, what is the behavior of a Vaishnava, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, a Vaishnava must avoid the company of a Vaishnava, asat. The word asat refers to an Avaishnava, that is, one who is not a Vaishnava. Asat Sangha Tyaga, Ete Vaishnava Acharya, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya-lila, chapter 22, text 87. A Vaishnava must be very strict in this respect and should not at all cooperate with an Avaishnava. That's the teachings of Sanatana Goswami, that was chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 22. If a Vaishnava offers food in the name of Mahaprasad, it should not be accepted. Such food cannot be prasadam, because an Avaishnava cannot offer anything to the Lord. Sometimes preachers and the Krishna conscious movers have to accept food in the home where a householder is an Avaishnava. However, if this food is offered to the deity, it can be taken. Ordinary food cooked by a Vaishnava should not be accepted by a Vaishnava. Even if a Vaishnava cooks food without fault, he cannot offer it to Lord Vishnu, and it cannot be accepted as Mahaprasad. According to Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 26, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhakti Prayachati Tadaham Bhaktiya Bhaktyu Pratim Asnami Prayat Mana. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Krishna can accept anything offered by his devotees with devotion. And a Vaishnava may be a vegetarian and a very clean cook, but because he cannot offer Vishnu the food he cooks, it cannot be accepted as Mahaprasadam. It is better that a Vaishnava abandon such food as untouchable. Okay, 54. When the contaminated food was offered to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a very large bird appeared on the spot and picked up the plate in its beak and flew away. Indeed, the untouchable food fell upon the Buddhist, and the large bird dropped the plate on the head of the chief Buddhist teacher. When it fell on his head, it made a big sound. The plate was made of metal, and when its edge hit the head of the teacher, it cut him, and the teacher immediately fell to the ground unconscious. When the teacher fell unconscious, his Buddhist disciples cried aloud and ran to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for shelter. They all prayed to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and addressed him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and saying, "Sir, please excuse our offense. Please have mercy upon us and bring our spiritual master back to life." The Lord then replied to the Buddhist disciples, "You should all chant the names of Krishna and Hari very loudly near the ear of your spiritual master." And that's what a way to preach, huh? Get them to chant Hare Krishna. By this method, your spiritual master will regain his consciousness. Following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advice, all the Buddhist disciples began to chant the holy name of Krishna congregationally. When all the disciples chanted the holy names Krishna, Ram, and Hari, the Buddhist teacher regained consciousness and immediately began to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that all the Buddhist disciples were actually initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And when they chanted, they actually became different persons. At that time, they were not Buddhists or atheists, but Vaishnavas. Consequently, they immediately accepted Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. Their original Krishna consciousness was revived, and they were immediately able to chant Hare Krishna and began worshiping the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So this is one of Lord Chaitanya's principal reasons why he traveled. One, to turn everybody on to Krishna consciousness, to reawaken their spiritual life, and to also the pretext of looking for his brother. But this was the main reason, and he did this constantly throughout his whole tour of South India. It is the spiritual master who delivers the disciple from the clutches of Maya by initiating him into the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In this way, a sleeping human being can revive his consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In other words, the spiritual master awakens the sleeping, living entity to his original consciousness so that he can worship Lord Vishnu. This is the purpose of Diksha, or initiation. Initiation means receiving the pure knowledge of spiritual consciousness. At one point to note in this regard is that the spiritual master of the Buddhists did not initiate his disciples. Rather, his disciples were initiated by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they in turn were able to initiate their so-called spiritual master. This is the parampara system. The so-called spiritual master of the Buddhists were actually in the position of a disciple, and after the disciples were initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they acted as his spiritual masters. They acted as his spiritual master. This was possible only because the disciples of the Buddhist Acharya received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Unless one is favored by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the disciplic succession, one cannot act as a spiritual master. We should take the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual master of the whole universe, to understand how one becomes a spiritual master and a disciple. So it's kind of interesting. We just read how he first told them to chant Hare Krishna. So he gave them the mantra, and then they whispered into their teacher's ear. Another example of this is when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. And right before he took sannyas, he whispered the sannyas mantra into the ear of Keshava Bharati. He said, I heard, by the pretext, I heard this mantra. Is it the correct mantra? Someone, told me this mantra. So he whispered it into his ear. And then when he received that mantra again, he already actually initiated him and then received, because Keshava Bharati was initiated in the line of Mayavadis. So he was able to first get the mantra from Lord Chaitanya, Keshava Bharati, and then he in turn gave it back to Lord Chaitanya. But he was purified at that time. So he works in mysterious ways, the Lord. When the spiritual master of the Buddhists began to chant the holy name of Krishna and submitted to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the people who were gathered there were astonished. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Sachidev, then suddenly and playfully disappeared from everyone's sight, and it was impossible for anyone to find him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next arrived at Tirupati and Tirumala, where he saw a four-handed deity. Then he proceeded toward Venkata Hill. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has actually described the chronological order of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit. The Tirupati temple is sometimes called Tirupatura. It is situated on the northern side of Arcot in the district of Chandragiri. It is a famous holy place of pilgrimage. In pursuance of his name, Venkateshvara, the four-handed Lord Vishnu, the deity of Balaji, and his potencies named Shri and Bu, is located on Venkata Hill. About 8 miles from Tirupati, this Venkateshvara deity is in the form of Lord Vishnu, and the place where he is situated is known as Venkata Kshetra. There are many temples in southern India, but this Balaji temple is especially opulent. A great fair is held there in the month of Ashvina, September, October. Weren't we just reading that month something happened? Oh, was it one of the disappearance days of Venkateshwar Pandit? He left. We didn't know what day that was. Was it Ashvini? Yeah, September, October. So we just keep reading. Any questions they're always answered. So there's a railway station called Tirupati on the Southern Railway. Nirmana Tirupati is located in the valley of Venkata Hill. There are several temples there also, among which are those of Govindaraj and Lord Ramchandra. Okay, so we'll read it one or two more. It's almost time to see the deities. After arriving at Tirupati, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited the temple of Lord Ramchandra. He offered his prayers and obeisances before Ramchandra and the descendant of King Raghu. Everywhere Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, his influence astonished everyone. He next arrived at the temple of Pana Nrsimha. The Lord is so merciful. Pana Nrsimha, or Panakal Narasimha, is located in the district of Krishna and the hills known as Mangalagiri, about 7 miles from a city known as Vijayawada. One must climb 600 steps to reach the temple. It is said that when the Lord is offered food with syrup here, he does not take more than half. Within the temple is a conch shell presented by the late King Tanjore, and it is said that this shell is used by Lord Krishna himself during the month of March. A great fair takes place in this temple. Okay, thank you very much. Stop at text 67. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate Radhe Jaya. Ulatarani Mandala Mahite, Gokula Tarani, Mandala Mahite, Gokula Tarani, Mandala Mahite. 62. Gokula Tarani, Mandala Mahite, Radhe Jaya Jaya, Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya, Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya Jaya, Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya Jaya, Madhava Dayate, Damodara Rati, Vardhana Veshe, Hari Nishkuta Brinda Vipineshe, 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 Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate, 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 Vrijabhanu Dadhi Navashashi Leke, Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake, Vrijabhanu Dadhi Navashashi Leke, Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake, Vrijabhanu Dadhi Navashashi Leke, Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishaka, Vrijabhanu Dadhi Navashashi Leke, Lalita Sakhi Guna Ramita Vishake, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate, 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 Karunam Kurumai, Karuna Bharate, Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite, Karunam Kurumai, Karuna Bharate, Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite, Karunam Kurumai, Karuna Bharate, Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite, Karunam Kurumai, Karuna Bharate, Sanaka Sanatana Te Charite, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate, Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Dayate. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha, Golokananda Radha, Golokananda Radhe, Jaya Radha, Golokananda Radha, Golokananda Radha. Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radha Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan, Jaya 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 Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Golokananda ki jai. O Radha, all glories unto you, all glories unto you, beloved of Madhava, object of worship for all the young girls of Gokula. You dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodar's love and attachment for you. You are the controller of Vrindavan, the pleasure groves of Lord Hari. You are a new moon arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu. You are the friend of Lalita, and your wonderful qualities, friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna, endear you to Vishaka. You are the ocean of compassion, and your divine characteristics are described by the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, and Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara. O Radha, please be merciful to me. Srila Rupa Goswami ki jai. Chaito Darpana Marjanam Bhava Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishami Hajjanina Nuraga Trinada Pi Sunichena Tarora Pi Sahishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadishakamai Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Babatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Vapada Pankaja Stita Duli Sadrashim Vichintaya Nayanam Galadashudaraya Varanam Gadgadaridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahaneba Vishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Ashlishya Vapadamritam Panastumam Adarshanam Marmahata Karotuva Yatatata Vidatolam Pato Mat Prananatastusa Evanapara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental qualities. They're not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand and end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me brokenhearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shastika Ki Jai.